Hello and welcome to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, we've got Jameson Maxwell, Ty Lee, as always. The Oklahoma Sooners have suffered their first defeat in the Brent Venables era, being taken down by the Kansas State Wildcats. Feel like it stopped me if y'all have heard this before. K-State upsets OU in Norman by a score of 41-34. Adrian Martinez was not contained, had an absolutely incredible game. And ultimately, a litany of issues just kind of came up to light. And I think it's clear this team, they aren't ready yet, which we should have known. Our hype probably got a little too out of control here. But nevertheless, the Sooners are 3-1. And Jameson, I got to ask, what was your first reaction to this game? What were your emotions like as the whole process kind of went on? And, is this team, we overhyped them, right?
Yeah, it's here's the thing. Yes, we overhyped them. We played the game where we were really happy and we were, eating into all of the positive vibes because things were looking up. That's what normal people do. But I'm tired of this now reverting back to the what did you expect crowd. This is a new coaching staff. They still have a lot to learn. They've only been here for less than a year, and they're still trying to implement their system, still trying to learn. I understand that, but we are a more talented team than K-State. We have more talented coaches than Kansas State, and we have better resources to become a better football program than Kansas State. There's no excuse to why we lost this game. Stop trying to find reasons for it. We got outplayed and outcoached and just all across the board. So don't say it's because, it's this new coaching staff and this new system. No, we just got outplayed. It's as simple as that.
I agree. Oklahoma absolutely did get outplayed. They got flat out beat. Oh shoot! It still says Kent State here. Hold on, let me fix that. Let me get the brand going. Oh no. Okay, now it just says Kent State. Okay. Well, okay. All right. This is a stupid bit. Let's move on. Anyways, no. I mean, I think I think there are two sides to that coin, and I'll get to it whenever. But after I, kind of kick it to Ty here. Ty, your thoughts watching the game and really, I don't know what the hell happened. What emotionally, what are you feeling?
Absolutely. Thank you for introducing me, Bobby. I have prepared a statement, in fact, for this occasion. I will be reading that statement now. I guess that wasn't clear with context clues. Friends, Sooners, sports fans, lend me your ears. I come here to bury this loss, not to praise it. The losses that teams do live after them. The good performances are oft interred with their losses. So let it be with OU. The noble Jameson hath told you Dillon Gabriel was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault. And grievously hath Dillon Gabriel answered it. Here, under leave of our quarterback and the rest. For Dillon Gabriel is an honorable man. So are the players all honorable men. Come I to speak in OU's funeral. OU is my team, faithful and just to the fans. But Bobby hath said that OU was ambitious, and Bobby is occasionally an honorable man. Eric Gray hath brought many tutties home to Norman. Whose win columns did the players' performances fill? Did this in OU seem ambitious? When that the players have cried, Venables hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Venables, he was ambitious, and Venables is an honorable man. You all did see that in the game. Play calling thrice presented OU a touchdown scoring drive, which the players did thrice squander with false starts. Was this ambition? Yet Drake Stoops says he was open, and sure, he was open. And he was missed by an honorable man. I speak not to disprove of how OU performed, but I am here to speak what I do know. You all did love OU once, and not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn while still holding hope? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin here with OU, and I must pause till hope come back to me.
Hey. Just one cut to get to the edge. Oh God, I hate ESPN.
What's that?
I hate ESPN so much. I hate ESPN. It just starts playing. I hate the autoplay. It always bites me. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to take this. Ty, great bit. That was an incredible speech.
The The first
Oh
one
my
is
God.
legitimately ESPN. What is that from, Ty?
I think it's from The Office.
Is it really?
Yeah.
No,
The
it's
Office.
it's from Shakespeare's Caesar. You would know that if you went to a good school, you would have known that.
Never read that book because that was for the non-honors English class to read. The honors English class read something different.
I was an AP,
Well,
so I
okay,
don't know what the honors
let's
kids were doing.
let's get
Okay,
back.
yeah.
Honestly,
Let's get back
but here's
on
the
it.
thing. I
But-
think that the one big thing that we have to say, Bobby, is excuses. Do you have any takes on that and like kind of reasoning out this loss?
I think there's a difference between excuses and realigning, what our expectations are for this team. I think because you're right. I think the way Oklahoma played was unacceptable, particularly on the defensive end. I thought there was a lot of issues in terms of inability to tackle, just scrambling. They did not look right. And then, discipline in terms of too many dumb penalties. Ty mentioned it in his Shakespeare quote. The false starts, the drive killing penalties were brutal. I feel like Gabriel obviously had his issues, but not. We'll get to everything. But I feel like excuses. There's a line between excuses and just a re-understanding of what this team is. Because you're right, they're more talented than Kansas State. They should have beat Kansas State. But at the same time, I think we have to understand that, on our end, I think we are overhyping this. I think on our end, we got too excited. If you look back at what we were saying, like right when, Venables and all that Lincoln Riley BS happened in, December, November, we knew that that would take some time. And instead we got hyped up the whole offseason, which there's still a lot of optimism. It's still a good team, I think, and it will end up being a good team. But I think to think that there wouldn't be trip ups, there wouldn't be mistakes, there wouldn't be bad performances like this, it was kind of foolish on our end. At the same time, it doesn't mean that this is an acceptable loss. This is not an acceptable loss. This is a game that Oklahoma should have won. It is Kansas State outplayed OU, for the record. I'm not saying that OU was robbed by any means. Kansas State, well-deserved win. They were the better team on pretty much every front. But at the same time, they should not. There in no world should Oklahoma allow Kansas State to be the better team, and it keeps happening, and it's very frustrating. And I think that it is an unacceptable loss. I fully agree with that. But at the same time, I feel like understanding that those unacceptable losses, that they're not there yet where that isn't feasible for them to drop that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. It's tough because to like give reasoning behind excuses. There's a fine line there, but it's just my thing. What? No,
I don't think that's an excuse. Okay, cool. I was just saying I don't think that's that I'm not excusing their like play really.
No,
it's just like
no. I think you said it well.
Cool.
Yeah,
I misheard you.
My thing is, and we know this with OU fans, we're very, very hot and cold. It's whenever we're, up, we're extremely up, but whenever we're down, we're very, very down. And it seems like the whole, whole verbiage and all of the, the talk is just turned to complete like, OU, what did we expect from them? We should have known this from the beginning. Captain hindsight. This team was not even set up for success. Our ceiling, we always knew, was never a playoffs appearance. We should have known that. Like, come on, what? Their ceiling is still a playoffs this season. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I understand Kansas State's a good team, but we've seen it so far this season. The Big 12 is not as stout and does not have giants there to the point where if you don't think OU could run through the Big 12 this season in a different, universe and make the playoffs, that's just silly. We didn't end up getting it in this universe, but that was absolutely a ceiling for us. Don't play Captain Hindsight that now that we lost our first Big 12 game and we got outplayed through and through, and there wasn't a point in this game where I thought OU was the better team. Now you think that, we should have known from the beginning. I just think that's silly. I'm just tired of people being like that. Ty, what do you think? What do you think, Ty?
But I apologize, viewers and listeners. Bobby was on mute. Again, we are occasionally accidentally muting ourselves throughout the season in memory of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Yes.
But
yes. That was that was not a mistake. That was just
that was why. Yeah, it was a bit. It's on purpose. Everything we do on purpose. But I sort of disagree with Jameson here. I agree that OU fans generally are very I don't want to say fair weather fans, because last time we really had a bad time was, I guess, before I was alive, or I guess we were all sort of infants in the pre-Bob Stoops era. But we do tend to be very harsh when things go bad, which, you know, you can't control anything as a fan, which is probably not necessarily that healthy to do, because it's not good to stress about things sort of outside of your control. But I do think that it's not unrealistic, or it's not incorrect to say, hey, you know, maybe we needed to temper these expectations. And I think that if you really think about it, Jameson would sort of agree with me here. Like, I don't know if it was the last podcast or the one before, but Bobby started going off on a little I'm feeling the playoffs thing. And both of us were like, hey, I don't know about that. And I do think it's, you know, this is our first taste of a real opponent opening conference play. And K-State obviously is not an amazing team, but they are no slouch, sort of. They're like the Big 12's Arkansas equivalent, or so to speak, you know, as sort of a chippy team that can maybe give you some troubles, but probably isn't at the top. But I do think, you know, realistic expectation. No one in their right mind was expecting this team to go undefeated. And if you go look at a lot of people's previews, a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, they'll probably beat OSU and Texas, but they'll probably have a loss or two in conference. And a lot of people weren't able to sort of tie that to a specific team because you never really want to do that in the sports broadcasting space, because you never want hard factual takes that people can point to and will get you fired. You got to keep things with the broad brush and with generals. Otherwise, you're Desmond Howard on game day saying A&M's going to win the national championship.
Big Wolf and Pittsburgh
or you're just anyone. Yeah, or you're just anyone on college game day saying things like SEC teams won't win the SEC championship or something like that. But I'm really truly not that upset, and I'm not trying to do a bit. I'm not worried about it. I don't think it's a crushing defeat. It's not a defeat that is going to really be held against us recruiting wise. If anything, it kind of helps us that we've been losing to them a lot lately, because we can have sort of a boy who cried wolf situation where we've just sort of desensitized everyone to this fact that we're probably going to drop some to K-State. So I'm not too concerned. I don't think it was a morale crushing defeat, and I still think it was a tremendous learning experience. I'm not one of those, this team needed to lose to be humbled or whatever else. That was certainly not this team this year or this staff. Yeah. That is, I think, a goofy take, but I don't think we needed this. I would have preferred a win, but I think Brent Venables said something similar and along the lines of, I completely forgot what I was going to say or what he said, but I agree with the thing that he said.
Sure.
Fair enough. And, you know, I think the people who are saying, oh, season's over, it's all ruined. Like, one, you can still win the Big 12. So no. And two, I feel like looking at OU football specifically, and just college football in general, if you're not an Alabama or a Georgia fan, or even kind of Ohio State, looking at it as, do we win the Natty or do we not win the Natty, determines their happiness with the sport, I feel like is just kind of a little not a great way to look at it. This team was always about building blocks. It was always about progression. And while I do think they're very good and can still accomplish a lot of goals, you know, college football does look pretty shaky across the board. You know, they could have a miracle run. Who knows? I'm not putting my hopes in that basket. What I want to see is progression, improvement. And that's been what they've been preaching since the get-go, is that this is team 128, that we have a long way to go. We're building something special, but that's just probably not going to happen this year. And yeah, like a lot of people said, probably, you know, to kind of cope with it, you know, look at what happens on Wednesday, probably. Things could get pretty good for OU pretty quick, but this year, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think it's we're not at the finish line just yet.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of things to take from this game. Let's kind of dive into it. And I think we'd be remiss not to talk about the defense first. I'll have my thoughts on Dylan Gabriel and Levy's scheme when we talk about the offense, but they weren't the reason we lost. It's the defense. And this is a team we were talking about the whole season, about great with sacks, one of the top 5 teams in tackles for losses. And on Saturday, they got 4 tackle for losses only from defensive linemen. The linebackers did not play well at all in stopping any gaps. And talk about QB spies. We let Adrian Martinez beat us. And to kind of, backtrack on my statement last week in the Kansas State preview, I said the way to beat Kansas State is to make Adrian Martinez beat you. Shut down Deuce Vaughn as much as you can, and then let Adrian Martinez go out and make plays. Adrian Martinez made plays. He stepped up and he played one of the best games of his career, and you got to give it to him for that. But we didn't adjust enough throughout the game to adjust to his play. Deshaun White playing essentially free safety as a QB spy is not a QB spy. That ain't it.
No, you're totally right. It's whatever strategy they have containing him, awful. 21 carries, 148 yards. Obviously had that back-breaking 56-yard scramble on a 3rd and 16. That was completely unacceptable. It was brutal. And that's the thing, is he did it through the air as well. 21 for 34 with 234 yards, average 6.9. I mean, he averaged about 7 yards per play, receiving or passing. That is that's not how you beat Kansas State. That's not how it looks. And a lot of what we heard before this was how timid he looked against Tulane and in previous performances. That was not a timid player whatsoever. He absolutely torched us. And it's kind of a problem when you clearly have, the guy to stop him. Everything else works. And they failed so utterly miserably at doing that. Okay.
Yeah, I think really it sort of bleeds into both sides of the ball for both teams. But fundamentally, look at the team that was able to establish the run the entire game. They're the ones that won it. They're the ones that carried the day. I almost feel like looking at the stat lines, the OU performance doesn't necessarily look too bad until, again, you start to look at certain linebacker stats and then things like sacks and whatnot. But a lot of our stats don't necessarily look that bad, and they don't necessarily look any different. In fact, a lot of our stats, if you're looking at individual player stats, if you were to look at both teams' individual player stats, minus touchdowns scored, obviously, you would maybe even think that OU had won. And one of the big differences in this game was we were able to string some stuff together pretty consistently, but K-State had the big plays and the big performances, the big talent came out, the big, important stuff happened when it needed to happen. Whereas on the OU side of the ball, when we needed to make things happen offensively and defensively, it just we could not make it happen. Unfortunately, we had a lot of guys, a lot of talent out on the field that had really, really good games. Just objectively speaking, if you're just looking at one guy's tape, there's a lot of guys that had really good. I think Eric Gray, for one, had a very, very good game and was held back really only by some play calling and some other stuff, putting him in bad situations. He, especially in the second half, had a very, very good second half for the way that he's employed. But it was just one of those. It was certainly a learning moment, because I don't know that you can really point to one specific thing. Obviously, we're going to dive into some gripes.
I disagree with
on
this
the offensive side, but so let me finish.
If you're talking about offense, that's different. I mean, talking.
No,
defense,
I'm talking about.
I feel like there's a huge thing we can point at.
But I think in total. So I sort of mentioned it at the start. I think that I was going to bleed into both sides a little bit, but the play calling as a whole, I don't think was as bad as a lot of people think, and a lot of the individual performances there were admittedly some pretty not that great individual performances, but it certainly wasn't a case where the entire team was having an off day. There were a lot of guys that had really good games. There were a lot of guys that had average games that I guess maybe could have helped us if they had above average ones. But I don't think necessarily anyone had a bad game individually, and I don't necessarily blame our play calling as much as others.
Justin Broyles.
Yeah, Justin Broyles.
I mean,
brutal, well, so he was, but he was sort of below his baseline.
David Ugwebu played really poor, in my opinion, even though he was our leading tackler. He was absolutely atrocious in coverage and in the open field. One thing that I'd said from the beginning of the season, why I didn't like him as much in that middle linebacker spot, that people take advantage of him in coverage. He is not a middle linebacker by trade. We recruited him as like an edge rusher, and he was converted. He gets torched in the open field, and they abused him. They abused him this game. And I think you can point to one thing in our stats, if you're looking just straight at the box score of what happened this game differently from the past. We had no sacks. We had 0 sacks versus a mobile quarterback. Mobile quarterbacks, sometimes you get lucky and just get a sack because they move up in the pocket and they're trying to run and we get there before him. We didn't even get any of those sacks. We had 4 tackle for losses only through the defensive line. We had 0 turnovers against them. 0 fumbles, 0 interceptions. If there's any kind of momentum shift in the game, when we're down 14-0 in the first quarter, it's going to be hard to win a game if you're not sacking or getting any turnovers in that game. So honestly, good for our offense for sticking it in it and keeping us in it until the fourth quarter. But we had no momentum plays at all on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to this defensive line just was also just not very good today or yesterday. Kansas State's O-line and D-line both played, I thought, very, very well. And I think, the initial test is both of our lines failed. Not one more so than the other, but the inability to make Adrian Martinez sweat, to make him make poor decisions, absolutely was probably the biggest failure by far of the defense. And it starts. I'm with you. It starts with that pressure. He looked like he changed the sliders or something where he just couldn't be tackled. It was absolutely wild.
Mm-hmm. It's what happens whenever you go against 2 first-team All Big 12 projected offensive linemen. In the past 3 games, have been 2 non-Power 5, and then Nebraska's offensive line that was bad to begin with and was also hurt. It's something really to be concerned with this team moving forward.
100%, because in case you didn't see, Jaden Daniels looks great. Your guy at Texas Tech looks great.
Yeah, Jalen.
Not
Jaden Daniels. Let's not talk about Arizona State LSU guy. Much different. Jalen Daniels playing like the best quarterback in the nation for sure. You imagine what he's going to do to our poor defense if we play like we did versus K-State.
Yeah, no, and then even talk about Spencer Sanders as well at Oklahoma State. There are some good running quarterbacks in the conference. So like Max Duggan this week can kind of, I don't know, he can kind of move around a little bit. So like, I don't know, there's a lot of concern watching this. I would say it's something they need to fix, and this is going to be a big test to see how this defense responds, what adjustments they can make, and really what would you do? What's the first thing you kind of do to try to fix this? What can be fixed midseason, you think?
What do you think, Ty? Do you have any thoughts on this? I'll let you go.
I don't really know how the transfer portal works. Can people start to play like immediately in the season? Like, can we get like Tanner Mordecai from SMU?
Oh my God.
We could get a different quarterback. I think
it's not our offense.
It's not Gabriel's fault. It is not Gabriel's fault.
I can point to specific. You can point to specific plays though. Like you can make like a big the line was bad. I can just point to like Dylan Gabriel wide open Drake Stoops to get us a first down conversion, and just literally cannot get it within 10 yards of a wide open guy with no pressure.
Yeah. He did not have good accuracy, and we've been saying that since the beginning of the season. He misses a lot of intermediate throws, like 15 to 20 yard down the field throws that he should be making, in all honesty.
He's really good. Like when it's really close, he's really good when he doesn't have to make a progression, when it's just like boom. And then he's pretty good for a college quarterback when it comes to the deep ball. I'd say he's certainly in the upper percentile in deep balls. Those are sort of toss-ups in college, but yeah, there's those mid-range, which is a lot of our playbook. You go back and look at a lot of Matt Corral stuff at Ole Miss. That was a lot of the electric Levy offense. So I certainly think that is some sort of serious limiting factor that maybe if we could get, Casey Thompson or someone to come fill in, we would be a playoff team.
Do you want to know that
if with Bo Nix, we could win a playoff game with Bo Nix on this team?
Do you want to know why I think the problem with this is? I'll tell y'all, jokes aside, what I think a significant problem with his accuracy is that would help. It's Levy's scheme. I really do. I probably yelled the most throughout the game about Levy's scheme than I didn't think I was going to do that. But what I started to realize in watching this is a lot of these plays are not designed for Dillon Gabriel to get outside and make his decision himself. He's not going through reads. He would go back, look at his receiver, Jalil Farouk, right in the eyes the whole play, and then throw it into extreme coverage and not go through his reads and go through the different receivers. Does Jeff Levy not believe in Dillon Gabriel to make those plays? Because if we have more talent on the offensive line, we have more talent in the wide receiving room versus these teams that we're playing against, we should let our guys go out there and make plays rather than have a scripted offense. I just think it's egregious whenever if he thinks that he has to throw to his number one option every single time, there's going to be problems with accuracy because he's not truly, I feel like, throwing to the best option every single play.
Yeah. And I think 1982 actually brought up a really good example of that where Stoops was wide open and then he just kind of chucked up a prayer up to Mims. So no, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think there were a lot of moments where he missed open guys and everyone agrees. He just kind of stares his guy down, and that's something he needs to improve on. And, I think the most troubling thing is it's not like he's a spring chicken. It's not like he's a freshman still trying to figure it out. This is his fourth year in college?
Yeah. Is this his fault, though? Is this Levy making him go, saying, we're going to get it to this guy within this scheme, and I believe so much in it? Or is Dillon Gabriel just a laser, just looks at his receivers? Me seeing it over and over and over in this game makes me think it's a scheme thing. Ty, you disagree?
I don't. So I disagree, and here's why. Because I kind of started to have that thought a little bit because when we get to the run game a little bit, I think I might agree with you more on Levy, but I might be completely misreading it. But my read on the situation when it comes to the Levy, Dillon Gabriel, everything relationship specifically, and I'm not trying to do a bit hating on Florida State. Well, I'm certainly not trying to do a bit hating on Florida State because it has nothing to do with them. Central Florida, UCF. That's where Dillon Gabriel came from, obviously. And we know that Levy was there, but Levy also spent his past year, or I guess 2 years, at Ole Miss. And when I look at his scheming and the way his quarterbacks and the way his offenses performed at Ole Miss, and then when I go back and look at a little bit of game tape of Dillon Gabriel at UCF, I think that Dillon Gabriel maybe has some bad habits that weren't necessarily reinforced, but never really came up to the surface. They never really, popped up to get corrected when he was in, admittedly, an easier situation for if you're a guy that's good. I think he was one of those guys that was sort of, I think it can be compared to a lot of things. He was very successful in high school, has a lot of natural talent, but then went to a situation where he didn't necessarily have to improve or develop that much. And now he's in a situation where he's severely behind the learning curve because he's jumped up and he's trying to do these things that are not the right things to do and have been sort of reinforced by past success, regardless of what you do. Whereas when I look at, like Matt Corral at Ole Miss, when he was in a Levy scheme in a much, much more difficult situation in the SEC West, they were not having these problems. It was not a situation where Levy's play call was restricting his quarterback. And I think Matt Corral probably is naturally a less talented guy than Dillon Gabriel is. But he grew up,
okay.
but he grew up in it. I'm talking about when they're coming out of high school. I don't know their recruiting stats and stuff.
I don't think Dillon Gabriel was that highly recruited.
We'll talk about the ceiling. Well, he's from Hawaii, so nobody really goes out there. But I don't know. So that's a cold take. Ignore that one. But I really think I don't know that when it comes to the passing game and the quarterback play that you can pin it on Levy, because if you look at what Levy was doing last year in a much more difficult situation, there were not a lot of the same problems. It was not a situation where the quarterback was being constrained by the play calling and sort of under this iron fist of an offensive coordinator saying, no, you have to do this. It looked like a good quarterback making good, smart, decisions in a situation that was conducive to his success. And then when I look at Gabriel coming from a much easier situation where you didn't have to necessarily be doing the right things to succeed always because they're just such an overmatch in their games, I start to lean towards maybe Dillon Gabriel has some bad habits and he is the limiting factor in that relationship. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I know might be some people going crazy in the chat disagreeing, but Okay, yeah.
Matt
So that
Corral
was
is more talented.
that was
He's a
maybe a
top.
cold
He was a
take.
top. He was a top 100 recruit. Near
Okay, yep.
0.97.
God,
And
my
then,
take was so bad. Bobby has
and,
left.
and
in
yeah, Dylan
protest.
Gabriel is not that. And the thing is, Dylan Gabriel. I really we love to talk about that. We love to talk about what can Dylan Gabriel improve as a Sooners quarterback to make this team better, because that's what we're conditioned to do as Oklahoma fans. We know that we watch a team that isn't a potent offense that can't bail out a bad defense. We're like, that needs to be fixed. We need to fix our quarterback and his accuracy. We need to fix that scheme. But in all honesty, I just keep wanting to ground this and say that that is not our problem right now. That's not why we didn't win the game. But we have to talk about it as well, because that is there's area for improvement there. I think Dylan Gabriel, if he shores up his accuracy a little bit better, and Levy calls a little bit better plays for him and lets him go through his progressions rather than throw it to the first wide receiver, maybe we might see a little bit of an improvement in the offensive game. The past 3 games, we haven't scored on the first drive, and that's not acceptable. It really isn't. I think, even though I think we got like a first down on the drive on Saturday, it was pretty much a near 3 and out, because it was a 10-yard run from Eric Gray and then 3 and out. I'm pretty sure the past 2 ones before that were 3 and out.
Yeah, we need to start talking. It's officially a thing we need to talk about. Our starts have been awful. Kent State, horrible. Nebraska, also horrible. It would have been 2 completely busted offensive possessions if it wasn't for Gabriel's like 56-yard run against Nebraska. So yeah, no, it's absolutely a thing now, absolutely an issue, and I think that lies with preparation. That's the only thing it can lie with, in my opinion, when it comes to screwing up, early possessions. It's about prep. If you can't have a good script ready, if you don't have the guys, energy wise fired up, that is all in the coaching staff. That is, in my opinion, that is an inability to prepare in a proper manner, where you can be effective early and really set the tone.
The thing is, I don't know if it's energy, though, because I feel like just reading body language of these guys coming out, I feel like they're coming out with decent energy. I really don't. I can't put my finger on it. What exactly is the reason that we're coming out slow?
Yeah, you're right. I think that's, for me, when I'm talking about like lack of preparation, I think it's just bad play calling. Maybe I don't really know. It's weird. Like, the execution is off. Maybe they're too excited, honestly. But
when we talk about the starts, when we talk about the starts specifically, I think that might legitimately be a play calling thing, because it seems like we are very, very predictable in our starts. It almost it's almost inexplicable. Like, it even down to like the very first 3 plays that we run, there's some slight variances on it, but we seem very sort of predictable, almost like intentionally. I don't know. Like, I feel like if you really wanted to give Levy the benefit of the doubt and talk about like, oh, like the casuals don't realize it, like maybe if we were really, really like turning up the heat after the first drives, you could make maybe some sort of argument that like we run the same scripted, predictable thing at the start to see how people react, and we're doing that on purpose to adjust from like a known baseline or something. But I really don't. I don't think it's like lack of preparation or something, but there's certainly something there, and I think it has to do with the play calling, because a staple of all of our opening things have been like these inexplicable, like running into like no gap, like even the blocking scheme, if it works perfectly, there's not going to be a gap there. Like weird delayed handoff thing that takes like 2 seconds to fully develop and always gets us 0 yards against everyone. Mm-hmm. Every time we do it. Like, it's like this weird, I don't know what it is, because sometimes, the blocking doesn't work, but then it's like this exact same play, left or right. But sometimes when the blocking is perfect, there's still no gap there. And I don't think it's a line performance thing. I just don't understand what this play is that we're doing that seems to show up all the time, like 4 or 5 times a game.
Yeah, I feel like we're really trying too hard to create like a game plan of how exactly we want our games to start. Levy's like, okay, we're going to run the ball, and if this is this scenario, we're going to run the ball and pass the ball and get it to this receiver. He's trying too hard to scheme it out. I think he's trying to put his hands too much on everything. And I've said this the whole episode, and I'm going to keep on saying it. I don't think he should be putting his hands over every single, the way the offense is going to be ran. Let the players go out there and make plays. And I feel like we're not going to see that until a little bit, and into the second quarter and the late first quarter. Everything doesn't have to be perfect and squeaky clean. Go out and let your skill guys make skill plays.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really weird looking at these drives though, because they didn't have a single double-digit drive until that final touchdown. In fact, a lot of just 5 plays, turnover on downs, 4 and outs. It's really just not. It's not good. It's not good, and I don't know what it is. I think you're right though. I think it's too micromanagey. I don't know.
I don't know. The offense, it's frustrating. It really is. But I keep having to say myself again. I've said it like a million times this podcast. Keep telling yourselves, and I say this for all OU fans too, it's not a problem and it's good enough to get us by right now. Do you guys believe that Brent Venables and staff can turn around this defense and get back? I do. I really do. I think that what we saw on Saturday versus K-State, there's a lot of things to be fixed, and I think the linebacking position is probably the biggest thing that we need to take our eyes at. And who better of anyone in the nation almost to coach up a linebacking crew and get them in a right position to play a similar quarterback that's much better, Max Duggan on Saturday, than Brent Venables. So I've got my eyes lasered absolutely on David Ugwoegbu, Deshaun White, and Danny Stutzman for coming up this Saturday.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think a guy like Stutzman could really, really go off. As for Ugwoegbu, man, I don't know. The man plays like when he's doing anything but rushing, it feels like he's playing with like concrete shoes.
You know what it reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of, like he plays well in these, regular season games, quote unquote. I'm talking NBA terms here, where we play lesser opponents and he can go and run over from sideline to sideline and make tackles in the run game, but not really get exposed too much. But once you take him to the playoffs, aka big time opponents like K-State, they can scheme against him and know his weaknesses and put him, out there on an island where he can't turn his hips and move his feet fast enough to make good coverage plays in open space.
So he's LeBron.
No. What he is he's your typical, NBA player that's really good on offense, but you get played off the court on defense. He's like a can't play canter out there. And I don't think he's not. Obviously, we're not going to bench him. He's still very talented, but what would we do as a backup to him? Because to be honest with you, our inside linebacking depth isn't the biggest depth piece that we have on our team. Would you convert Deshaun White to inside linebacker and see more Jaron Kanik at Cheetah? I would think that would be an option, but we barely even saw, if at all. I think Kanik got 0 snaps. Is that right?
I think someone in the chat was mentioning that, I believe. As Bobby's pulling that up, I will say there were 2
zero snaps.
Yeah, I don't recall the specific plays, but there were 2. You guys might remember. Someone in the chat might remember. There were 2 very big examples of plays where Deshaun White was in coverage and made very, very good, looked like a legitimate starting safety. But I think there were a couple plays. But there were a couple plays where he struggled as well. But there was one play. I think it was almost like a near interception where I was like, oh my goodness, who is that? Like that was really, really good, and I was very surprised to see that it was Deshaun White. So certainly our coaching staff have noticed that maybe a little bit watching the game tapes back.
And it feels like it hurts my head so much. Like, why is Deshaun White playing so deep? There's so many plays out there where I see him as he's like our deepest free safety. And I know he's not playing free safety. He's playing that cheetah all over the field look. But what do they know that I don't that makes him a good fit in that position? Like, what am I seeing with this that's doing like that is a good fit for him on defense? I'm very, very confused with it. Things just don't make sense for me.
I really think that to put it sort of in medical terms, maybe a little bit, I think we are very resource limited skill wise when it comes to our linebackers. I think we're obviously very depth limited. I think everyone is aware of that, but we have we have great talent, but not necessarily great across the board talent. Like we mentioned, we have a lot of guys in the defensive side, especially on the linebackers, who you can look at and they're sort of like maxed out one stat area, but then they have critical weakness in another. And I think we're dealing with a sort of a triage situation, maybe, if you were, where we're having to look at how to best we're starting, off the back foot. When you're in a sort of a triage situation, you're already starting to be overwhelmed, perhaps. I don't know how it is in sort of civilian real world medicine, but you're starting off the back foot and you're starting from a losing position, and you're having to best employ your resources and your talent where you can to sort of mitigate that issue. And I think when you really look at this game and our linebacking core and their performance, and even some of the schemes that were coming down for them, the linebackers and then the secondary to an extent as well, I think you start to see a situation where we are very clearly limited in a lot of ways, and we're having to do this is good, but we're doing it because we're in extremis here. It's not what we would normally do if we had the choice.
Deshaun is not the perfect cheetah. I agree with you there. They're definitely going to recruit that position much better whenever we can get those guys 2 or 3 years down the line.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. And
Well,
it's definitely a situation where we're kind of having to make do with what we got. And it's a complex scheme. Yeah, it's a complex scheme that they just, it's just not there yet. Go ahead, Ty.
I was going to say the other thing is we have tremendous talent. Don't get me wrong, on this team and in this coaching staff. But what we don't have is sort of the perfect situation. We don't have the team that this coaching staff has handpicked and recruited and developed. They've been here for, I guess maybe less than 6 months now, or maybe 6 months, something like that. So we have a situation where we've taken a lot of really good talent. That
would have been March.
Well, I went to OU, so math is hard. But we're in a situation where it's not the built team. We've taken the pieces that we have, and we're making. I sort of made this analogy the other day on a previous podcast. We're cooking with leftovers, so to speak. Here we have some great steak. We have some great rice from earlier. We have some maybe fresh chopped pineapples. We have some good veggies. We have a nice fresh chopped onion. A lot of really great talent, a lot of really great ingredients, but not necessarily maybe the ones, if we're trying to build a steak dinner, that you would have for a steak dinner. So we're having to cook some really good fried rice, but it's not that steak dinner that our coaching staff, our chefs and cooks are here to build. So I really like the cooking with leftovers analogy. You can still make a great meal.
It's pretty good.
But it's not necessarily, it's a great meal, and we have great ingredients, great talent, great players, and we have great chefs, great cooks, the coaching staff and the scheme. But the coach, it's not going to be that perfect steak dinner where in a couple years, when the chef is established in his kitchen and knows the kitchen and knows the implements and can go out to the grocery store and get the talent, get the ingredients that he wants to really create that masterpiece. So I think that's a sort of a good analogy to keep with. We're not cooking with a microwave, we're not cooking a TV here like some other schools are doing, like Notre Dame. Notre Dame is like, my wife left me. I've been surviving on Bud Light and minute fried rice in the microwave with butter sometimes to sustain myself. We're not in that situation. We're making some great steak fried rice.
They had a good weekend.
So who's the random pineapple on this team that has screwed the whole dish up?
It has to be a person that's very polarizing that some people like and some people don't.
I guess chicken fried rice you would mix in maybe some pineapple. Yeah, I don't. Dylan Gabriel, I guess. The left-handed.
Guy from Florida.
I just say that because he's Hawaiian.
Obvious. Oh, that is. Okay,
I said from Florida. I didn't even think of the Hawaiian thing. I guess, are pineapples even from Hawaii? Is that a thing?
I think so.
Drake Stoops is the state. I'll tell you that. Drake Stoops is the meat of the team.
Hey. Drake Stoops is like, he's like that. He's like a choice cut of meat that is about to expire in a day. But you know what? You put some really good seasoning, a little bit of butter on it. Perfect.
Drake Stoops is the butter. We'll say that. Yeah.
Drake Stoops is the butter. I love it.
The butter. And back to real analysis though. I know Bobby has his own. Actually, this is a good advertising point for on our YouTube and I think our Instagram as well. Bobby does some really neat cooking stuff. each time we face
yeah.
an opponent. He cooks one of their meals. It might be becoming apparent at this point that I have not yet watched one of them. And I did not participate in the filming, so I'm not entirely sure what they are, but I know they involve dishes, and I read the titles and I think, that sounds yummy. I wish I could have gone. But yeah.
That one was a grilled cheese mac and cheese. It was great.
I absolutely lost it when Bobby was about to pull his sandwich apart, and he was hoping he was get like the cheese pull with all the strings of cheese, and he pulls it apart, and there's just no cheese and strings between the sandwich. I absolutely croaked and lost it whenever that happened because you were just like, "Oh."
Yeah, it was a little disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. I was ready
It's
for
a
one of those,
mac and cheese.
Instagrammable.
They use
kind of hard.
They use Elmer's glue and food dye. Actually, I saw that on a TikTok that was screen recorded, then posted to YouTube, and then recorded, and then posted to Instagram. I saw that's what they use in commercials. They use glue.
Gotcha.
On like
By the
pizza
way,
commercials and stuff for the cheese.
Hawaii is the pineapple capital of the world. By the way,
Yeah,
I knew it's in the Hawaii Bowl logo. I should have known.
That's debatable. I feel like that's contested. Potentially,
Yeah,
is that recognized by the UN?
Oh my God.
Oh God, yeah. This is
Since we've kind of gone off the rails, I'll just say this. Does anyone have any last thoughts about this game? I feel like we hit it all pretty well. But I think I just want to just say this straight up about this game. It's not the end of the world. It isn't. We are just fine. I understand OU as fans, and I've said this in the past, we hold ourselves to a very, very high standard. And whenever we lose one game, especially in college football, we think that everything's gone down the well. But it's not. It's not. We still have plenty of things that are great in the future of this season that we can obtain. We still got the Texas game in front of us. We only have one loss. So anything can happen in this college football atmosphere. So don't try to go too much pessimistic. Keep the optimistic side of things and enjoy the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's far from the worst upset we've had at Kansas State at home, even in the past couple of years. This year was exciting. We wanted to see improvement. We thought that we'd see a lot of really cool stuff, and I think we will. I think we'll see improvement on the defense. I think we will see a good offense. I think we will see good football, markedly better than what we thought when we were losing Lincoln Riley last November. But no, I think there's still a lot to play for, a lot to watch, and a lot to be excited about, because in the long term, I feel like there's a process here, and I wouldn't be too worried yet. It's baby steps across the board. This team is better than what it showed on Saturday, and hopefully they move towards that. I think there's a lot to be excited about, a lot to play for. But Ty, what's your final point?
Yeah, so real quick, we weren't going to do them. I have a game ball. Special recognition, Jaleel Farouk had an absolute game and is really showing the depth of our receiver room and efforts. I think a lot of people might be upset sort of at Mims' performance. He had a good stat line performance, but he was in a lot of situations where he was sort of forced the ball when he didn't need to be. Theo Weiss, similar. I think he had a drop that was maybe on him, and then obviously Stoops was missed on the targets that he had. But Jaleel Farouk had a really, really good game with some big boy NFL level catches in traffic, in situations where he probably shouldn't be thrown the ball, and made the catch that I think is worthy of. I'm not trying to compel you guys to do game balls. We can continue to move on, but I think special recognition to him, because he's one of the guys, like I said at the start of the episode. We had a lot of very, very solid individual performances for sure. So I wanted to mention in closing, and then I wanted to echo that same sentiment. I don't think that this is, obviously losses hurt, but I don't think it's that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Objectively, I'm not trying to compensate or hedge, but objectively, this is a rebuilding year for OU. We all knew that. And it has not knocked us out of contention for anything. This is not a loss that's going to hurt recruiting severely. It's not a loss that is maybe even going to hurt our chances of making it to or winning a conference championship. And K-State is a well-coached, good performing team. And, this is maybe not a quality loss. If you can make that, I don't think quality losses exist at all. They certainly don't exist in the Big 12. But this is not a bad loss. It would have been much worse had we lost to one of our previous opponents. And I think people will recognize that, which is good nationally. And I think there is nowhere to go but up from here, certainly with this team. So I don't think anyone that's super, super upset. Obviously, it hurts, but I wouldn't be too upset. I don't know that this necessarily really hurts us in any tangible way besides a one in the win-loss column.
Yeah.
On the loss side.
I don't think it stops any momentum at all. I'm absolutely with you. I think it's a lot of. I think it obviously stings. It sucks, but no reason to fire Venables or like burn the house down. I think we're going to be okay. I'm with you.
But, yeah. And before we end this, I did promise I was going to give a shout out to a loyal listener of ours, Jamie. So thanks for listening. I saw her on Saturday and she's a loyal listener. So I said I was going to give her a shout out on the pod. So shout out to Jamie.
There you go. Shout out Jamie. Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Well, folks, we have some fun episodes coming down the pipe this week. Still, we got a TCU preview with Bowden Blake. We hey, Jameson. We might have a Cruden Corner little
right after this.
Coming up here.
We are coming right after this. So if y'all are listening live, we're going to send out a new link here in a little bit. I'm going to talk about this new David Hicks announcement update coming this week, and then talk a little bit about, does this loss change anything with our chances with Peyton Bowen moving forward?
You know what, guys? If you want to tune in, guys and girls, everyone listening, if you want to tune in, we got some crazy stuff developing in the Cruden world. I don't think he was planning on talking about it, but I'm compelling him to speak about it. We have a recruit who is in legal trouble of no fault of his own and stranded. He's from Georgia, stranded out in California now with his plushie toy that we've discussed on the pod, Little Chop. Crazy, crazy situation. NIL gone bad at the high school level. I didn't even know that was a thing. That Jameson is now compelled to talk about on.
We'll talk about Little Chop.
So he's going to have to discuss T.A. Cunningham, stranded in California. We all know that's the worst possible place to be, period, besides Austin, Texas, which, fun fact, is actually in California. A lot of people don't know that. So, tune in to the Cruden Corner for that. And shout out to DraftKings, our sponsors, and Raycon headphones. They hit it first in the headphone game.
Oh, God.
So, shout out to them.
All right, folks. Thank y'all. That's why. All right, folks. Thank y'all so much for listening. And by the way, if you're listening back on your podcast, feeds, listening to this not live, and you're like, hey, there's my recruiting episode. What the heck? Check it out. It'll come in tomorrow, or you can check it out on YouTube a day early. So definitely check that out. So for me, Jameson and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. We will see you soon to talk about recruiting. Have a good one, everyone. Boomer Sooner.
Raycon headphones. Listen to